Hello and welcome to the show. French political parties of the right are choosing their party leaders. Marine Le Pen gets the unanimous backing of her party, while Nicolas Sarkozy gets the lukewarm backing of his. Both now looking on to 2017 and the next presidential election. I'm joined today by a regular panel of journalists, Jean-Marc Gonin, senior writer at Le Figaro magazine. Thanks for joining us. And Philippe Turrell, journalist at RFI. Political journalist at RFI. Thank you as well for being here. First, a quick look at what the weekend looked like for Nicolas Sarkozy as he tried to drum up support for his candidacy at the helm of the main right-wing French political party, the UMP. In the end, it was 64.5% of the party faithful that voted to see him back as the party's president. Jean-Marc Gonin, this is something of a disappointment. His supporters had hoped for over 70 or over 80 or close to the 85% he'd got way back in 2004 when he'd won the same election. Well,
it is disappointing for him, but in a way it was to be expected because he has been in power for 5 years after all. He has disappointed people in his own ranks. And I think after the defeat he got against François Hollande 2 years ago, he's still... I mean, it's still a high rating that he gets, because 64%, it means he has a legitimacy within his own party that is enough to exert power inside it.
A legitimacy to exert power within his own party, Philippe Turrell, but not the sort of mandate he would have hoped for that would have projected him beyond the primaries and straight into the candidacy for 2017.
The difficult part, I think, now is starting for him. That there's been this election which was a foregone conclusion that he would win. Nobody really knew how much he would win by. There were two other candidates, one of whom did much better than expected on 29%, the third candidate on 7%. So it was an overwhelming victory for Nicolas Sarkozy. But compared to 10 years ago when he took over the UMP to begin with and won 85%, complete plebiscite to take over that party, things have changed. As Jean-Marc said, he was in power for 5 years as president. He lost the last election. And some of the people who he was in charge of when he was formerly head of the UMP party have now become challengers to him. And one of the main ones is Alain Juppé, who was a former Prime Minister of France. There are also other challengers, another former Prime Minister, François Fillon, who may also be running again, or be running for the primaries in the 2017 presidential elections. So whereas before he was on his own, seen as the supreme candidate, creating a war machine to make him win the election in 2007, now he's back hoping to create a new war machine, but with some of the people he was dominating before now coming forward to say we've grown up and now we're going to be candidates ourselves.
And all of that, coupled with these open primaries that are to be held in 2016 for the UMP for the first time, Jean-Marc Gonin, means that a return of Nicolas Sarkozy as the UMP's candidate in 2017 is far from a foregone conclusion.
It's far from a foregone conclusion. He has a series of hurdles to jump, and precisely those primaries will be a difficult proof for him. But on the other hand, having the party apparatus, the money, the means behind him will help a lot with the rest of the contenders being more or less on their own. Of course, they'll have supports within the ranks, but when you are the boss, you have most of the means backing you.
And one difficult thing also that we haven't come across yet is what exactly Sarkozy is going to propose. This has been a personality-dominated election and situation for months. Is it going to be Sarkozy? Is it going to be somebody else? Now that it is Sarkozy, well, what is he going to do? We don't know.
Well, it seems for now that he's going to keep it very much personality-driven. Have a listen to what he had to say, his first televised address after becoming president of the UMP.
I will bring together a team that represents all the views of our party, because today demands a collective effort. I do not want that my country be led down a road to a desperate situation, where the only choice is between today's humiliation with François Hollande or tomorrow's humiliation with Marine Le Pen.
Jean-Marc Gonin, does he really have to propose terribly much? In the end, people are going to be frightened enough with either prospect to vote for him, are they not?
Well, yes, but you still have to have a convincing program to get past the first hurdle, which will be the first run of the elections. He will have probably François Hollande on his way and other candidates, and even to differentiate himself from the rest of the contenders within his own parties, party during the primaries, it will have to have a profile.
And it is a difficult tightrope to walk, isn't it, Philip? Because on one hand, you have to speak to the party faithful, he has to speak to the right and win them over. He seems to be doing that fairly effectively, but you also have to begin speaking beyond the limits of your own party. It's all the difficulty of a primary a year ahead of a proper election.
Well, 2.5 years is a long time in politics, so we've got a long way to go before the next presidential election. You have to remember that Nicolas Sarkozy lost the last election in 2012 for a reason. And there are a majority of French people who don't really want him to come back and be president again. So he has to win over those people. He also has to contend with Marine Le Pen, who is riding very high in the opinion polls. And he doesn't really know how to deal with this, whether to try to swing voters who would vote for Marine Le Pen back to his party, and if so, how he's going to do that. And on the left, he's having to deal with François Hollande. François Hollande is very, very unpopular in the opinion polls at the moment, but that could change also in the next 2.5 years for those who have only a choice between Marine Le Pen or Nicolas Sarkozy. You might suddenly think, well, maybe François Hollande's not such a bad choice after all. I will vote for the left. So there's no easy way forward for Nicolas Sarkozy. He's got over the first hurdle, but the rest is going to be very difficult.
Yes, especially when you look at let's make a kind of a forecast that the second run of the election will be Marine Le Pen against Nicolas Sarkozy. As you mentioned, Elisa, he will have to have several discourses to convince certain types of voters, primaries, first round, etc., second round. Marine Le Pen has a clear path. She has no hurdle to pass. She is now on her way to the presidential election. She has 100% of her supporters within her own party. She will have the same discourse all the way.
And it was with a great deal of confidence, in fact, that she addressed her party this weekend. As you mentioned, Jean-Marc, she had 100% of the backing, a figure that Nicolas Sarkozy was no doubt quite jealous of. Here's what she had to say to her annual party conference on Sunday.
Our policies are at the heart of political discussion in France. Everyone is talking about how dynamic we are. The opposition determined their strategies based on our successive wins, to the point where today, my friends, there's no doubt that we'll make it to the second round of presidential elections in 2017.
Philip Gerald, there's no doubt she'll make it to the second round.
There's a strong possibility she'll make it to the second round. Of course, she's not going to say anything different. She even went on to say, I'm going to make it to the second round, and it will be between François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy to know who comes second in the first round, because she thinks she's going to come first. It's going to be very difficult for Marine Le Pen, virtually impossible to become president of France. Sounds about as much chance as I do of becoming president of France, but she will do very well in the presidential election. It's because she's worked out a programme of appealing to those who are unemployed, those who are facing difficulties due to the financial crisis. They've never been in office before, so no one can criticise what they did in the past because there's no past. So she has a sort of green card to say what she likes, to do what she likes, to become demagogic, if you like, to win support from the public in France. And she's worked out a way of doing that. But from what she's saying and to actually be able to put into practice the policies she's talking about is completely different. And a lot of people are saying, well, if the National Front did get power, wanted to pull France out of the European Union, wanted to pull France out of the Euro, wanted to re-erect barriers around France and pull France out of the Schengen zone, it would be a complete disaster.
In the meantime, and until we know whether or not she makes it to the second round, Jean-Marc, her presence, her weight, the fact that she is heard, that her message, however extreme, is getting across, will colour the nature of the political debate in France between now and 2017.
Of course, it already does. I mean, when you listen to Sarkozy in the last weeks, he has been stealing on our arguments about immigration. He has been even tougher than what he said 5 years ago or during the presidential campaign. So he's been already taking over some of the arguments. And I wouldn't be as assertive as Philip on her having no chance. I mean, as you said, Philip, 2.5 years to go. I mean, the economy in this country is plummeting. I mean, you have soaring unemployment, companies shutting down, etc., etc. And she is making profit out of that situation. If it lasts two more years, I mean, I wouldn't be as assertive as you are, saying her win is excluded.
Well, I think if you put together all the left plus the traditional right and put them together, that will outweigh those who would have
But
voted
she's
for
stealing
the
electorates from
But
both
she
sides.
is stealing, but it's now up to the traditional parties to try to convince their voters not to move towards Marine Le Pen. The difference here is that in the old days, under Jean-Marie Le Pen, the father of Marine Le Pen, he was seen as a troublemaker, but not someone who's a serious challenger to power, whereas Marine Le Pen has made it patently clear right from the start that her aim is to win office and to take the presidency of France.
And the nature of the message has slided as well. It's found, her new message, anti-Europe and so on, has found a certain resonance within Europe and amongst other sorts of parties.
Exactly.
This is
And
also
she has
a
also
debate.
made efforts to have an entourage that is far more presentable than her father's. I mean, she has lieutenants all around herself who are credible people, I mean, in the eyes of many people in France, who could become ministers. And that was not the case of her father.
And also, she's generalised her policy to encompass a policy that would appeal to those on the far left who would have previously voted for the communists, to bring them in to vote for the National Front. Just an example, she did not demonstrate against the gay marriage bill, which in the old days evidently her father would have done, and her niece, Marion Maréchal Le Pen, also did, but Marine Le Pen decided that she wasn't going to because she thinks that that is something that France needs. And also she hasn't made any remarks about the abortion in this country that has just celebrated its 40th anniversary, whereas other members of the National Front have said, you know, they were against that. So she's trying to make herself more open towards people on the left and to be more appealing towards other sectors of society.
And so whatever happens, no doubt a force to be reckoned with over the next couple of years. That brings us to the end of this edition of Politics. Philip Turrell, thank you very much for having been here. Jean-Marc Arnaud, our regular panellist, thank you for joining me. There'll be more news in just a minute, and we'll be back next week with another look at what's happening in the world of French politics. Goodbye for now.